Hello, hello. Welcome to another week of BlackLantic. This is Hillary and Clinton.
We'd like to welcome you to another show. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all the channels, you know that. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Tunes, leave a comment, follow, all that good stuff. Let's get into it.
This week, we are with Baba Mr. Shabazz, as we just discussed. We're going to be talking about him, about Emancipation Day, our various Emancipation Days. And I'm so excited to have you on. I didn't really get to talk to you before coming in because I'll be honest, I'm a little bit late and I'm sorry. And I thank everyone for their patience. But I'm so excited because you have been following our podcast, I think, since as long as it's existed. You're, I think, one of our top commenters and people who engage with us. And it's not often, I think, that we get to have guests who know what we do, who know what we're about, we're from where we're from, and really get the full context and scope. So thank you for coming on, and thank you for, responding so last minute to getting on the episode. We're so thankful that you're here.
Absolutely. And not only that, sorry, go ahead. Not only that, you're very active yourself. I've seen numerous YouTube videos that you've put out, just dropping different kinds of knowledge. You're constantly tagging other Black organizations and making posts of your own, sharing wisdom, sharing events. You hosted an event in St. John just a couple of weeks ago. And it's really amazing to have you on the show. Sorry to cut you off earlier, but welcome.
Well, no problem at all. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I'd like to take this opportunity to say that this is since we have the Clarion and the Neath, but there hasn't been Black media focused by us here. So it's definitely not lost on me. This is my first time on your show. So for our Black business, this will go down in history as the first time we were on Black media. Thank you guys for doing what you're doing. You really bring topics that we as parents, mixed parents, whatever kind of parents, individuals need to chew on. So I've been following you guys since before you guys. I was SoundCloud with like Marcus and Fidel in the Black and Maritimes, and now we've been doing this. OGs in my community put me on to paying attention to who's making moves, and you guys have been making moves for a long time. So nothing but peace, health, success, and happiness for you. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Man, we appreciate that.
I'm tearing up over this. Thank you so much. Also, my cat was screaming in the background because he's in support of what you're saying. Maxwell, also mixed race, a Black and white New Brunswick cat.
Right.
So
this is a lot of our stories.
Recognizes. Respect. No,
a lot of our stories. Yeah. I'd like to take this opportunity to shout out. We did have a pop-up market here, building off our business plan. We partnered with BBI and Jocelyn Eaton and Stevens out of St. John, or in the whole area. So great partnership. That built from meetings we went with them in the past, learning what they do and how we can work together. So we have a great network building here. I try to tag as many people in the posts I make. So, your network is your net worth. And I think we should all get that bag. So let's get that bag.
Amen. Amen. After that. So 2 questions to start off with. Are you mixed race as well? Because I don't know the answer to that. And second, Mr. Baba Shabazz, what an interesting name. You're going to have to tell us about how that came to be and who is Baba Shabazz.
100%. Most of us watched Malcolm X. Most of us know Muhammad Ali, from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali, from Malcolm Little to Malcolm X to Alhaj Malik Shabazz. Well, here from the Black United Front in Nova Scotia to residing here now in New Brunswick, there was a brother, George L.A. Clark speaks on, Arthur Chris, but actually now Hamid Rashid. And Hamid Rashid was a brother who back in the day who changed his name because of what Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam was doing. Now, this was back when the Nation of Islam was having dealings through the Black United Front in Nova Scotia, buying fish to go to their different army rations and stuff. So from talking to Rashid and the movies they made in Nova Scotia called Born Again African, growing up young, mixed, not seeing a lot of Black faces, when I finally crossed Rashid's path and I seen a brother who actually changed his name around here for a reason, every time I said his name and seen him, I was revered that this man did it here where it's awkward or weird, or it's not, but it can be palated that way. So for my whole life, I've been following this kind of cause. And I was, my Christian name, my adopted name, Joel McPherson, was always what I went by. always searching for, the hip hop name, that new name, something to call yourself. So I settled on Baba Shabazz for a lot of Orisha, Yoruba type things, Elijah Muhammad type things. But Baba Shabazz, the simple version, is father of a mighty and powerful nation. And I am Black. My wife is Black. We are coming together and raising a family. We both come from the white mums, dads kind of environment around here. So we're really starting that new nation. So the name being called invokes the power, just like what Kanye's kid and Jay-Z's kid and Michael Jackson's kid are all like Sir and Prince. But what you're called invokes. So I'm trying to use that magic because my emancipated mind is making me reach back to that which was taken to try to implement so I can work my Black magic. So hence Baba Shabazz. Yeah, it invokes.
That's so cool. I think that not only do I find that super interesting, we know that in America it's such a common thread to see so many Black people with last names of their slave masters, and that really mean nothing to their culture and themselves and who they are. And then you have the entire queer community who part of and love, but trans people left and right changing their names to represent who they are. And so you mentioned, how there, people were finally doing it and it seemed like it was such an awkward thing. But now in 2023, everyone is reinventing themselves, whether they are their brand name. Like, so people call me Cropberry in the streets now, and that is a bizarre, weird thing that I don't love. But I don't see it as awkward, at least now in 2023, but I can get where you're coming from. But in terms of like what is in a name and an identity, there's so many Black people who they are not their last names. They are not Jones. They are not this. They are not that. That is someone who owned their family. And if anything, it's a point of contention. So I find that super, super fascinating.
I'd like to speak for the mixed and alone, adopted, and all those type of kids. I was adopted by two white folks who are treated me absolutely glorious, grew me in safety and security. And by no means was it an attempt to disassociate from the love they gave me. But it was more of the ugly duckling story where it's time to step out on my own now and become my own father and leave your mother and father and start your new. So I think it's more of an honoring once you, digest the gods of your father and then you go on to your life, you make that stand. So, I'm 45 now and I talked a lot of coming up and challenge the government. Like we were talking earlier in my heavy metal days and protesting and all that. And, well, now I have to live by it, and I have a beautiful Black woman who keeps me in check because of that. So we're able to roll and say Baba Shabazz strongly and not feel embarrassed or like I can't live up to it.
That's beautiful. Shout out to Tanya, who we look forward to meeting one day as well.
100%.
Is she close by before the end of the episode? If she wants to jump in and say hi, that's okay too.
Would love to. 4 children, sleeping all ages from 5 to 18. So availability is probably on the lower end. But, multiple episodes. I'm trying to compete with Karen, Farron, Family Farm. More episodes, more views.
I was waiting for you to drop that on the air.
We're going to tag them in this now. Now it's a competition.
Baba's coming for you, Karen. Baba's coming for you.
Nothing but love. I'm coming back for that sugar cane.
No, in a good way. Obviously in a good way.
I'm curious, are you going to Summer Salsa?
Just talking to Kathy Gordon, good friend of Dia Hernandez tonight, about that, all around scheduling and the agriculture we're involved with. So agriculture really limits where you go and what, but want to, absolutely. Like a lot of things, we get to what we get to. But someday you'll see me there.
If you're able to, and I believe Karen Farron is as well, I want a BlackLantic showdown in the streets. I want like the interview off of my dreams if you're able to go, because I know Farron's gonna be there.
And we're gonna be there. Yeah.
That's
funny, Hillary. I was gonna comment earlier that I think this is the first time I ever heard you use the term "in the streets," like when people they call you Cropberry in the streets, and then you did it again. So that's it.
I'm out here. I'm in the streets.
That's right. You're everywhere.
We call things in the street. I'm out here.
Amazing. Well, Baba. So we also just always like to ask our listeners, and it's ironic because this is the question on any other show maybe they couldn't ask, but so. Tell us about where you're from.
All right. So before King's Landing was where it is now, King's Landing was supposed to be in my hometown. I live in Kingston, or the Kingstown. And when King's Landing was constructed, we had the working grist mills and all the blacksmith shops here in King's Landing, where the Union ship landed in 1783, etc. But since they flooded up north, they had to move King's Landing up there. So I say that to frame, I grew up in the Loyalist capital of Anglican New Brunswick. The oldest Anglican church is right next door. It's the church I grew up with. It's the place where if you want to grow up, you have to understand the gods of your father. So I learned all about the gods of my father and did that study there. So I grew up in big blue conservative, white t-shirt pickup trucks, CCR, you know. But I was talking earlier, I learned how to do the dance. I had a great time growing up. I had a great time growing up because I was able to avoid, sidestep, deflect people, get around things, not necessarily hide and, well, no, I cooned out probably for a while until Doug Cromwell saved me. But anyway, yeah. So, you know, that one black person in the small town, all those stories are true and sad. And, but so I grew up country. I have several hundred acres of land. My dad was a woodlot manager. Christmas trees, fishing, canoeing, you know, hunting, yeah, snowboarding and heavy metal music. That's New Brunswick, you know. It's New Brunswick.
That sounds like a fun life, to be honest with you. Do you want to explain to people what the dance is, like what that means to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you just tell me the name? You mentioned it, Hillary, in a previous show about a book a brother wrote about the light skin dance that we do to get through the day. Do you remember that?
It is an essay in the African Anthology edited by Greg Franks, and our first ever guest.
That's right. That's right. Okay.
I have it beside me. I can probably find it by the end and either plug it and put it in the description or tell you. But it is this this essay essentially about this Jamaican boy with a patch on his backpack who feels like because he's mixed, he has to do the dance and be the whitest black student he can to get the good grades to then be able to get accepted to where he wants to go to college. And then all the black kids hate him for doing the dance was the essay.
Right. Thank you very much. I wanted to plug that because, you know, more local people doing stuff. Brother Conway's in that book too.
Yes.
But yeah,
and Gary Weeks did the cover.
Right. Yeah. Black New Brunswick Black Artist Alliance. But the dance is going to sleep at night with a smile on your face while you have to deal with micro and macro aggressions everywhere, and getting around it in a way where you don't feel to yourself like you're selling out, but you may feel like a sellout when you're around someone who's from someplace else who approaches it different. So that's the dance you're comfortable with until someone from the outside challenges the mixed dance, or how does the gazelle act around the lions dance. Yeah.
And that was oh, I tried to do something that didn't work well. And that was Doug in that case, right? I'm gonna fix my camera, hold on. So that was Doug for you, right?
For myself?
Yeah.
Yes, Doug Cromwell. Superhero. Absolute superhero, man. Absolutely.
So yeah, so like to the people listening, so what you're really talking about is coping mechanisms and survival, right? Trying to stay sane in the center of insanity. And
what would Dr.
no
Joy
means
would call it the post-traumatic slave syndrome, and how we use those coping mechanisms or Stockholm tactics. Yeah,
Stockholm.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's why we're here. You guys got this station. The Black Rose Nation is here building so we can give that strength, wisdom, and understanding so our people can stand on that strong and firm, emancipate their minds so we can reach back to what made us great, so we can rise and get that bag.
Yes, brother. Yes. I love that. He just threw me off what I was going to ask next. Well, I guess you're going to try to find that for the end of the episode, Hillary.
I'm briefly looking and seeing if I can remember based on the names of the titles. I'm curious, since you grew up in very rural New Brunswick, like and you mentioned this person, Doug, but like, were there any other, like, as someone who grew up in New Brunswick and I was one of 5 black kids in school, like at what point did you start to I don't know. I guess I don't even know how to word this question, but I guess I recognized at a certain point how assimilated I had been in doing the dance. And I think a question we often ask immigrant guests is, at what point did you realize you were Black? And so I wonder, for you, in your perspective, obviously you knew that you had melanin, but at what point did you maybe realize that you were doing a dance? And did it become apparent that there were other people of color living a different experience than you because you had CCR in your back pocket, which also reminds me of my childhood, and that made me very happy to hear.
Oh, right. Right, absolutely. I mean, I found out first, I mean, I always knew I was different. So when I got to high school, I found heavy metal music, and that really gave an outlet to anybody who's different, weird, poor, crooked, or rich, and everything. Like it was a spot for being different. So I knew I was different in heavy metal music. Heavy metal music spoke about nationalism and spoke about human rights. It spoke about the weather. It spoke about acid rain. It spoke about politics. So I knew, since I grew up rural, I knew fighting for land was important. When I went to high school, and heavy metal music taught me fighting the systems that oppress us are important. And then when I was 17, I got given the autobiography of Malcolm X by brother Doug Cromwell, absolute superhero. And then I knew I was Black. So it was a stages thing.
Right. Interesting. That's super interesting.
Salute to heavy metal music.
Do you want to tell
on the kind that uplifts?
Fair. What? Sorry, Clinton?
Yeah, we were talking about heavy metal music a little bit before the show, and how misunderstood it is, how much I love the energy from it, and also just sort of some of the concepts they embody. Let me know if you disagree with me, but just like they do talk about social issues a lot, and rebellion and speaking up, and just accepting people.
Unapologetically.
Yeah, people think it's all like death and hate, but it's really just about like F the BS.
Not, right. You can find that everywhere. But it's easy to find politically aware, culturally aware in heavy metal music, and very easily to find that. I want to plug Sepultura on that one. Anybody wants to dive deep on Sepultura? There's some great Brazilian brothers who are speaking about the land for many decades.
Nice.
I found it. So it's twofold. It's a poem called "Unsafe" by Asante Houghton, and then "Safe," which is an essay in which another Jamaican Black boy comes to the school as an immigrant when he's 6 years old. And then he sees someone with a proper Jamaican accent and not what he considers a Scarborough Jamaican accent, and realizes that he's not as Jamaican as someone from Jamaica, and has this whole identity crisis, and then realizes that he's doing this dance, and then continues to question after the school makes it hard for this immigrant Jamaican boy to stay, to the point where he gets removed from the school. Then Asante wonders, how is he able to stay? And it continues to plague him throughout his educational career until the end, which I won't spoil. If everyone go get the African anthology.
Absolutely. I think a lot of us go through that. And since we grew up in a system where we have Emancipation Day, but we haven't really gotten the information to emancipate our minds, that since a lot of us do that dance when we get older, we hide from race issues or discussions or events, or publicly outwardly saying we will for everybody else, every other anything. But when it comes to the Black issue, we seem to become silent. And I can understand that coming from the dance in New Brunswick. So that's why we try to provide through our websites and posts and everything is seeds so which you can grow off of, so you can speak confidently. So listening to Karen Farron, like again, back to Karen, about moving here, about her kids in school and the differences. Again, us as parents need to listen to more of your episodes and those books, so we can chew on this and discuss it in ways that aren't just on podcasts, but in actual family to family. Help strengthen our kids.
Amazing.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I want to ask, unless Clinton, you had another question, but we sort of talked around it a bit in terms of Summer Solstice, but you've yet to actually tell our listeners what you do and what your Black business is, and I'm so excited. Was that what you were going to say too?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
It
Tell us
feels
more
like
about what
you
you do.
do so much, Baba. I know you have the
Yeah.
Black Rose Nation Culture Farmers.
Right.
Posting, you're making your content. I think I saw you rapping. I saw you rapping
Old school, baby. We're
outdoors
old school. I'm
in
45,
front of the
man.
water the other day. That's amazing. No, it is okay to rap nowadays. You have all the legends from the 90s. I just
Yeah.
finished listening to Nas's album that he dropped last week. Like
Yeah.
it done when rap
Rap is
came out,
matured.
everyone was young to begin with, but now you have all the old heads still rapping and all the young kids doing their
There's a
trap music.
maturity to
So
it. There's a
there is,
maturity to
and
it.
there's still an
There's a
audience
business
for it
and
because we grew up on it. Yeah.
yeah. And it's
Go on.
becoming mature and business wise on how to own masters and how to do all these things properly. So there's a real cultural understanding within the Black mind from the African Union to Snoop getting death row, to that basketball player who just got that $307 million and wants to build a new Tulsa. Largest NBA contract in history was the other day, and the brother got on and is like, I want to build a Black Wall Street. And I'm like, so this is the day and era we're in. So that's super exciting. Emancipation Day, we just celebrated, or it just passed and still celebrating through it. So it seems like we're taking some wins, and I like to see that.
Absolutely. That's amazing. I'm glad you're doing all of that amazing work. Welcome back.
But okay, yeah, sorry. Let's get back to what my business is.
Yes.
So we are the business is the Black Rose Nation Holistic Sunshine Management. And what we do is culture farming. So trying to put that together is just a huge build in itself. Just like Ice Cube lyrics, they sound simple, but if you want to build off it, it becomes huge. The Black Rose is the song Mind Sex by Dead Prez. At the end of that song speaks of the Black woman is the Black Rose. And that song, that album helped me mature and develop into the marriage I have with my wife. So it represents the nation we're growing from that Black Rose. And the holistic sunshine management is holistic everything under the sun. And since we're a sun people, we need to manage that power in everything we do in life. So as you're seeing on the screen, that goes from, I grew up with Christmas trees, blueberries. We have the sawmill. So we do woodlot management, nature tours, walk people through the woods and talk about the trees. But how does this tie to Black business is because I will say vitamin D for melanin, you should get from buffalo, salmon, white pine. Vitamin D for white folks, you should get it from a mushroom because a mushroom is a heterotroph, or the sun is its, let's just say, enemy for easy talking. And the other things are phototrophs. So we can begin to learn Black culture through nature, in which what our business does in all aspects. We're trying to educate our employees, the people who come and patronize with us, and ourselves. So everything we're doing holistically is building our genetics to reach the full potential so we can reach our full potential and get out of this systemic dance that we do, scared to talk about ourselves in strong ways. So we sell cannabis soil. That's what that is, kryptonite soil, but it's living soil. So instead of buying fertilizer for plants, this has the biology in it that attaches to the roots. And once you put the biology in the soil and you treat it right, it will be there forever. So the roots will always have what it needs when it needs it. So when you grow people, you need strong roots. So you need the proper things feeding it, not fake things. So the soil we sell builds on our concept. The Christmas trees we talk about, from the Christian way to the scribe in Egypt who had the Christmas tree in the pyramids. So, we incorporate culture through our business, through our property management. But it's all about educating the patron that what you buy affects your health. So we put everything under that banner. And in building forward, it seems like a lot. But when you step back and breathe, it's because in business, you want to have multiple streams of income. You want to have multiple streams of income that are different businesses. Then you want to eventually be able to have a trust or a holding company, which overarches those. So this goes into a powernomics understanding, which I'm trying to develop. So when my children and children's children come on, there's multiple businesses which they can fit into, feed them finance and health and wealth, and also teach the people around them how to, let's be controversial. Let's use the things Donald Trump uses to save money. Like, I like tax breaks. I want tax breaks. I want tax savings. I want generational wealth. I want to pass it on to my kids. So in that aspect, that's what we represent, generational wealth in every aspect.
That is incredible. You definitely have multiple revenue streams within this one management company, right? Everything you mentioned, like you're pulling in different things from other locations.
Right.
It seems like you have a huge amount of land. And let's be real. I mean, obviously, to those listeners, don't be turned off by the Donald Trump comment. I mean, that's the way it works. That's the way it works. You know,
right.
When the conservatives are in power, they focus more on tax breaks. When the Democrats are, you know, they put more money towards social services, and there needs to be a balance of both. But if you are a business owner in this nation, you have to take advantage of the opportunities you have to use the same tools that I'll just say white corporations and white business people have used before us. There's nothing wrong with that. You have to do what you can to give. I mean, I'll say it. I mean, the government is kind of like the biggest organized gangsters there is, right? Like, they want to cut off everything you do. They want to take that 15% and plus your end of year taxes, payroll taxes.
That's right.
You got to do everything you can.
Business owner with us.
Yeah, you got to do everything you can to keep every penny you can legally. So that's pure knowledge. That's pure facts. I don't know if you've ever gotten into mentorship, or business counseling, but it sounds like that's what you're trying to do already organically.
Building towards it with, like I said, Jocelyn Eatman-Stevens with the Brunswick Black Entrepreneurs and BBI. As we grow and develop and we keep the notes on all our years in business, we really feel like we're getting to a point where, we could offer some really insightful information on how to allocate monies, or life insurance policies, term or life, who do you leave it to? All these little things that in the long run creates generational wealth, so we can steer our culture with our own money in self-determination towards what we want to accomplish. But without our own generational wealth and businesses and streams, then we're asking and looking and waiting for a suggestion. And we've been emancipated. Emancipation happened. Well, in a way. So, if you don't mind, I'd like to build on Emancipation Day for a minute.
That's a perfect segue. We can spend most of the rest of the episode talking about that if you like. I will drop one compliment your way, though. And not only do you have the information, like, you speak it with such passion that it's inspiring. Even though I already incorporate these practices, hearing you say it is like inspiring. Like, you got to do that.
And that's what your podcast does for me and many others who have yet to follow and do follow.
Thank you. We thank you. We're always trying to get our listenership up. And to anyone listening on audio, most of our listeners are on audio. You did miss some amazing visuals from the website right there. I want to talk about emancipation as well, but I've been curious for a long time. Do you mind, just out of my own curiosity, it seems like you grew up on hundreds of acres. Are you still on hundreds of acres?
Oh yeah. My dad was an absolute revolutionary about back to the land. So his grandfather showed him a group of trees that would be big enough to mill when he grew older. So from those, we built the barn, and then we built this house. So, we cut the trees, we hauled them out, we got the sawmill, we milled them up, we poured the foundation, we built the wood. So I'm on that family land. And that family, that white loyalist family in history, had my wife's family as some kind of slave indentured servant. So picture this, my white family is now leaving that loyalist land to the Black Rose Nation. That is Canadian, New Brunswick, self-administered reparations pacts. So it's a really cool story all the way around on how that's manifesting. So that's not lost on me either. So that's I like that story.
Damn.
Damn. Yeah.
That's sick.
It's full circle.
Isn't it?
That's amazing. So cool. Yeah.
We could go a lot more in the history in Kingston and another time about greater builds, but yes. Yeah.
Thank you. I've been in the country a few years, and so this fascinates me. Go ahead, Hillary.
No, I just wanted to say that your passion reminds me of Logic Neil Donaldson, and also Karen Farron, and these people that we've had on the show who are constantly championing that, like, without Black people having the education and the skill sets that white people do, we will never be freed. And so that idea of emancipation has to come from being able to farm your own food, because if the white people control everything and it's white systems and we're still being colonized because of the systems in place, how are we ever going to be self-sufficient? And I was recently asked a question, and I probably am going to regret bringing this up. I was recently asked a question around having kids. And someone said to me, are you prepared to teach your kids how to make their own food and grow their own food in the apocalypse? And I was like, I don't like to think about the apocalypse. But as someone who has been pretty white assimilated and goes to like a fancy food place in Toronto, I am not prepared to sow any type of seeds or grow anything. But there's so many people, I think, in like Black elders and knowledge keepers in communities who have mastered these skills and can do all of these things and are prepared for when these white systems crumble and fail to have a resurgence and be like, well, Black people are in charge now. Black people have the power now because we know how to, like, we got Karen's goats. We've got your Christmas trees and your wood and your hundreds of acres of land. I'm going to go make a little hut in a corner behind a tree and I'll be safe.
100%. Absolutely. We forage a lot of food. We used to like plow farm for a while, but as our understanding grew, we forage a lot now. So I post a lot from the Black Rose Nation and Baba Shabazz in New Brunswick wild edible foragers of what we do on almost a daily basis, or pretty consistent, to try to show at what time and what season is in your backyard. So, you know, we have our propaganda building on the apocalypse too. but stuff that grows readily available out there. Because a lot of time we plow under amazing crops to grow inferior ones. It's very peculiar, but you know, we're colonized. So
yeah, even wildflowers you could put in your salad, different weeds you can mix up into your lettuce. Yeah, I've learned about that this year too. All right, so we kind of cut off the perfect segue you had gotten into. You were talking about being emancipated. We are emancipated.
Right.
Talk to us about emancipation, Baba.
So yeah, so I'll start off by absolutely saluting like great elders like Rosemary Sadler, Jean Augustine, the Black Action Defense Committee, you know, all these cats who put in work to get us to have these dates official and celebrated. So on all those notes, to all the freedom fighters, everybody who put in work, I celebrate you and thank you. And I use that because I'll say some things that might seem like I'm now not happy with it, but it's really just to frame it properly. Emancipation means to unconstipate our minds. All right, Brother King Joshua Mupanga says, unconstipate your mind. What's his name? Ngugi Wataongo talks about decolonizing the mind. These are African brothers. And Brother Professor James Small says, let us remove the mystery by learning our history so we can work our black magic. So again, unconstipate your decolonized mind, find out who you are so you can work your black magic. Emancipation happened. Okay, let's talk about Britain. 1807, they said no more slave ships. Okay, 1807, they said no more slave ships. 1833, they freed the slaves. Okay. When they freed the slaves, they paid $15 billion in today's dollars. I'm equating it. $15 billion in reparations. Does anybody know that Britain paid $15 billion in reparations in 1833? And do you know who they paid it to? The white slave owners, because they lost their slaves.
Yep.
Okay. So in 1833, we're celebrating giving $15 billion to white slave owners? Okay, in 1833, they got the $15 billion. Then in 1835 was the Berlin Conference. This is where Belgium, Germany, Italy, France, Spain, they laid out the map and carved up Africa. They said, you get this, you get that, I'm getting that gold, and I'm getting that diamonds. That was 1835, okay. 1833, they got the 15 billion. And then 1835, they take that investment, go over and colonize Africa, take all the land, wealth, and resource, exploit it, and take all the gold and diamonds because they had the money to do that, which they got given to them. So these white folks who lost their slaves then just got a whole bunch of money to go invest and destroy Africa? I mean, that's kind of, and in the United States paid $7,000 per slave to their slave owners when Abe freed them. So I'm just saying, yes, Emancipation Day happened, but they gave them $15 billion. American gave them $7,000 per slave. Then they went into Africa and colonized it. And in 1835, the contracts that they made with those countries are still intact today. So they're still living under the contracts from the billions they got. So I'm starting to say, like, when I see people celebrating it who are at high ranking, let's say, Black leadership, I can see who was put into leadership and who earned leadership. Because there's a lot of people who were put into leadership who I love, who I wish were grandmothers to many people I knew, who are lovely people, but they're not saying this because they don't know this. So in 2015, Britain just paid off that debt. So when Britain gave $15 billion, they made the taxpayer pay that $15 billion back. And guess who the taxpayer was? Pardon?
I just looked that up, and in 2023, that 15 billion is actually, it's $363 billion if it was in 2023.
And they just paid it off. So who's been paying it off? The poor people in Britain? Well, who are they? The Creoles, the immigrants that you moved there and stuff? So you're saying other Black people paid off the debt you paid to? Okay. And then if you research the British trusts, the big families who have trust funds, like I'm talking about, I want trust funds because I understand how you guys milk this. The trust funds that were created from that money, a third of all the British trust funds are of that 15 billion. So when we're celebrating Emancipation Day and these same families and government officials are telling me to come out on my own dime, on my own dollar, to spend my own gas, to set up in your city so I can bring people and patronizing, who's getting the tax dollars? Who's getting the land, wealth, and resource? Who's getting the structure? I'm working really hard to try to hustle pittance. So I started to get mad at Emancipation Day because we didn't get land, we didn't get wealth, we didn't get resource, we didn't get economics, politics, or power. And we know how to. We know how to. We have a perfect example of how to emancipate people. Look at Israel. I'm not saying I'm politically for or against, but just look. We know how to put a people in a place, give them land, wealth, resource, defense, money, finance. So I see it as forked tongue. I see Britain as lying. I see Emancipation Day as a joke because I see Black folks doing a lot of work and getting very few money for it. So Canada and Britain can have these flags saying, look at us, we're red, black, and green. I'm like, you have no idea what red, black, and green means. You're totally out of touch. So thank you for the elders who brought it. Please, us who are finding out this information, let's inhale it into our soul so when we tell our kids about these days, we can celebrate being emancipated, but don't let certain people walk a certain way telling you you're free and it was all okay, now we're equal. Like, no, we're not. You got 15 billion, bro. You guys got to build your whole wealth. So there has to be a readjust. We won't get into how right now. That revolution can come another time, but we need to beg for nothing. We need to provide what's needed. We need men and women, mothers, fathers. We need communities to stand up. We need businesses to form. We need people to teach our children on purpose. Even if you go to public schools, you know, what clothes you wear. See this? This is Ray Sean Miller. This is a brother in my community who makes clothes. This is from Sister Scoop, who did her pilgrimage to Ghana, Accra, because she got tripped out during the COVID trying to figure out what was going on up there. We need to emancipate our minds from mental slavery, right? None but us can free our minds. That Bob Marley song, Redemption Song, comes from a Marcus Garvey speech given in Sydney, Nova Scotia. So let's go back to happiness. Emancipation in Bob Marley's song is from Marcus Garvey, spoken of in Canada, because we've been RBG revolutionaries. We've had the Black United Front. This is who we are. So I've emancipated my mind. I'm here to teach my people about the power of God, the power of nature, and the power of the universe, so we can use that to get land, wealth, and resource. So no matter what happens, us as adults can make the children feel safe in any circumstance, and our children can grow and develop their minds so they can become adults. So emancipation is great, and it makes me mad as hell because of that 15 billion. And that's not talking about the Haitian reparations they got. That's not talking about the France reparations they got. I'm just talking about America and Canada or Britain right now. But damn it, I'm conflicted. The mixed people in New Brunswick, we're conflicted with and every freaking thing and everything we're conflicted. But I digress.
No, you don't digress. You're so on point.
Yeah.
I didn't know a lot of that.
It's expensive, bro.
It is offensive. Emancipation, it sounds like such an exciting and liberating word, right? It's the
Doesn't it?
process of being set free from legal, social, political restrictions. And while Black people were no longer declared slaves, and we're not even going to get into like indentured servitude, which happened immediately after, and Canada and the States. I don't think they were called Jim Crow laws in Canada, but we know that even in New Brunswick, nobody had it easy after that, and that hasn't
Oh,
changed.
no.
Emancipation is just too exciting a word for the reality of what happened. I mean, maybe
Okay.
emancipation for all, emancipation for the white slave owners as well, because they certainly got the bag after that, right? They
Right.
got more rich than ever.
If we were emancipated to become ourselves, to live up to our full genetic potential, what are 2 holidays we celebrate that are our own? What are 2 ways we celebrate God, which are our own? You know, the old time before we were colonized. You know, what are 2 foods we now eat because we emancipated to go back? We don't know 2 foods. We don't know 2 holidays. We don't know these things. I mean, some do, but it's in a small group. So you begin to wonder, if we've been emancipated for so long and people have been telling me to celebrate this for so long, where can you show me you've been emancipated? You know, white Jesus is not emancipation. I mean,
facts.
I love the Jesus, you know what I mean? I follow many of the great books and the teachings and the craft, but yeah, what are you emancipated from? Now, we do have holidays. We have Savior's Day given by Elijah Muhammad. We have Kwanzaa given by us, which was Mulana Karenga. We have holidays, but they're never pushed. Like, you know what I mean? So if you were really pushing United Nations Decade of African People, and you were really pushing Canada Emancipation Day, you would be pushing Black culture, where Black people themselves reached back in their Blackness and brought Blackness forward to, I'm now emancipated to celebrate this. But what you're telling me I'm emancipated, but without, where's the evidence? Where are you showing improving me? You're not showing improving me that evidence. We seem to be hidden from it.
Yeah, and even if that wasn't necessarily you go ahead, Hillary.
No, well, no, you go ahead first, and then I'll go ahead.
I was just going to say, even if that wasn't necessarily possible back then, I mean, now with DNA testing, there's a higher chance of at least knowing what country you were from, where your origins were, where your original cultures were from, because, you know, all the people stolen from West Africa and Africa brought over here, it was like a new culture was created, and that's why Black people are just called Black people, right? We're not called Canadians, we're not called Americans, we're not called Somalians or Nigerians or Cameroonians. We're called Black because it's like genetic modification. They took everyone and created a new culture over here. And you're saying, like, what are 2 of your like, and you know, the answer to your question, like 2 foods that could be different for almost every country in West Africa. So it's a good question. Because
to be offensive, rice and chicken ain't African food. That shit was brought to you by colonizers and stuff. And now we go to markets and stuff. I'm glad they're getting their money. I'm glad people are over here getting their hustle on. Absolutely. I salute you. Please go get that. But you can see how these little things are put in an antiquity. Your food is the nutrition that made your genetic potential be able to express its full self. And a food that makes you weaker, dumber, slower, and sicker is not your cultural food. That was something that was implemented, given. So, I mean, there's so many dynamics we could go down. But just becoming emancipated, find your food. If it's going to be chicken and rice and beans to start off with, excellent, do that. But we need to continue on this emancipation to find out who we were. That old time religion, you know, like the old time religion, I got mad at a church, but a lot of our old time religion is in the Black church. That's why it's called the Black church. Because we hid a lot of our principles, values, and that crap inside there. So I think hopefully in the new way, we look back, instead of just throwing everybody out of church and getting all mad about that, is recognize that we actually hid a lot of our maroon, Creole, free wood, ceremony, celebrations, and rites of passage in those institutions. So I want to get back to that old time religion, that religion that provides us food, clothes, and shelter, safety and security in such abundance that you can share it. That is religion. Everything else is colonizer, systemic racism religion. I ain't talking about that.
I have a lot of thoughts. I have so many thoughts. And I want to first comment on the idea about like finding yourself and like that type of freedom of emancipation, because we talked about that a little bit with Carlin Purcell when I had the sort of dark-skinned female roundtable around the idea that colorism is not just an ism dictated by a level of pigment, but it is that idea of not knowing who you are, not finding yourself, not tracing your roots all the way back to understand who you are, so that when you come to the table, present yourself as who you are fully fledged in yourself and so confident that no one can tell you otherwise or any other way. And a lot of what she was saying was around that of like, how many people can follow their lineage and their heritage despite what white people, the man, has taken from us to make us unaware. Which comes to my second point, which I think around the idea of emancipation and that idea of freedom, the thing that comes to mind the most for me is the idea of education and knowledge being power. To be fully emancipated and to be fully free, it comes back to what we were saying before about the skill set and education and knowing yourself to be able to be mentally free of all of these burdens that make you still enslaved by the society and culture around you, even when you're in theory supposed to be free to do whatever. Simultaneously, funny enough, so what I did for Emancipation Day, I'll mention one of the things, is I hung out with Rosemary Sadlier. I was with her. She was giving an award to a director of a theater company that is in downtown Toronto. And we talked about Emancipation Day and its history. And it was pointed out that next year will be 190 years of emancipation. And it is not law. It is not law. Emancipation Day. It is not in the law books. It is like a day, but it hasn't been officially recognized as law. And Ngozi Paul, and Annamie Paul's sister, was calling for this additional motion to be put in place where it actually becomes law on its 190th year, which I thought was really interesting, because I don't necessarily know enough about politics to know the difference between having a federal official day, having a provincial official day, which, as we discussed, were happened in 2 separate years. Canada 3 years ago, New Brunswick 2 years ago. And then now, moreover, the fact that basically what she was complaining about was the fact that when you open, let's say, a Google Calendar or your Apple Calendar or whatever technology, if something is legally a day, it will automatically show up, like the coronation of the king, that everybody got on their page the minute they decided they were going to put Prince Charles as King Charles. But there is no Emancipation Day on August 1st when you open an Apple Calendar. It is not recognized and in that way. And she wants for the 190th year for it to be recognized. And I found that very fascinating, because it wasn't something I had thought of.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so I really see, two worlds. Very much like people understand what they call Native Canadians or Indigenous people is there's Canada, and then there's reservations, and then there's understanding in the general, and then there's understanding in their culture. So there are moves I wish the general governments and policymakers would move and make. But now that I'm 45, I focus more on individually our culture. I'd like to be a spokesperson for our culture on these things in those spaces, but I'm not going in those spaces to make those moves. I'm no longer trying to convince white people of anything. I'm trying to empower Black people, and empower Black people just influence everybody who's around, no matter who you are. So the residual of that will cause that. But I put a lot of effort in trying to convince people who I thought were on the wrong side or misunderstanding, and now I'm more focused on people who want to hear or is in my direct community. So, I wouldn't necessarily push for it to be a federal holiday, because I'd get mad that if white folks got Emancipation Day off after they got $15 billion and now you're getting paid to not go to work, like that would rub me wrong. You can give me the day off, pay me, and then give me that give us that $15 billion and say, okay, well, we'll just give this to you now because we shouldn't have done it that way. And then we can come to some understanding. But until I get my 15 billion or we get our 15 billion, I ain't listening to what they're saying, because it sounds like forked tongue to me.
Love that. Isn't that exactly what happened with National Truth and Reconciliation Day? Where I think provincial and federal employees got paid days off, and that was so great. It's a holiday now, and so white people get the day off with pay. and that's what the government's doing to recognize National Truth and Reconciliation Day.
Furthermore, please give me a moment to do my favorite thing that we do on the show, which is that blame Higgs. Blame Higgs. He's the one who decided not
T-shirts
to indoctrinate.
Coming.
He didn't indoctrinate Truth and Reconciliation Day for New Brunswick. So it's federal, but it's not provincial. And I want to say like 5 provinces. I think that there was a delay in several. So not only Higgs, but my favorite white guy just screwed up again. Anyway.
It's the hustle day. It's the hustle. It's the hustle.
Our listeners know that we don't hate white people because we say the word white people a lot.
I mean,
we just like the.
We also have a thing with that. Like, I grew up in CCR country, so when we talked about World War II, we said the Germans. When we talk about it, we say the Chinese. We say the Koreans. But black people can't say the white people. What the hell are you talking about?
That's really well said.
Post-traumatic slave syndrome we have. We can't even speak truth to power without. But that speaks to our compassion. That speaks to our compassion. You know what I mean? But
the whole white fragility topic, right?
Yeah. So I understand it. Again, the dance. I grew up in the dance. I was a pro. But I mean, now I just say white folks. I got white folks. I pushed Farrakhan on them. We watched Farrakhan speeches together, trying to develop my understanding. So there's all kinds of white folks who can listen to all kinds of things, hear different points of views, and it's rock and roll.
And I really like that you were saying that you're not asking white folks for anything anymore. That's not your focus. You're not pushing for a federal holiday. You don't care about that. Because I was going to ask you the question. Like what I feel I'm getting from you, as I was listening to all the things you were saying, I was finding it shocking and like ridiculous and wondering like what to do with myself, how to process all this. And everything like that. And as I heard you speak, it's kind of like what I'm understanding from you is that, well, like, that's what happened, and you're not out there looking for reparations, although I know you're not going to, you wouldn't deny them. You would take them, but that's not the focus. Like, it's not that. It's now, after all these things that happened in the past, you're asking white people to do something for us. Your focus in life is empowerment of black people, empowerment in terms of agriculture, taking care of yourself,
and specifically body politic. We need to understand body politic. If Canada wanted to pay reparations to black people, what organization is distributing it? We have no body politic. We have organizations set up by the colonizing system, but we don't have a body politic. Natives got a body politic. You know what I mean? They have nations and tribes and chiefs, but we don't have a body politic. So let's just say the Canadian, North American, black descendants of slaves, we want to do business with Africa when Africa makes their own dollar. Well, we should have a body politic so we can have a free trade agreement with Africa as the diaspora. The diaspora should have our own body politic. And having a business is a body politic. So that's part of what we're building towards is we need to have an understanding of body politic so that we can work in the areas of law and international law and education on an international level and not just as like handout and begging. So body politic,
self-governance,
is a must. Emancipation Day, body politic.
That's what I was about to say. You're focused on self-governance. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I've talked about this before in the sense that I think America, what they have and what they do well is the thorough thread of black trauma connecting all of the black people within a nation. And the fact that I find even within New Brunswick, the black people tend to be segregated. And it's so hard to know what all of our organizations are doing, what all of our alliances are doing, aligning ourselves and working together. Until we interviewed Yao, I had no idea there were black people in Newfoundland until the Changemakers thing happened. I didn't know there were multiple black people in Newfoundland. So how do we as a country have body politic and self-governance when we can't get our heads out of our asses and use Facebook to talk to each other? It's so hard. And I think it's because of the way that the diaspora and immigration has brought us all here together. And we, as a country, are fed the mirage of this mosaic and this melting pot. But then there's like a very disjointed sense of community until you get to this point in this place where we're having these types of conversations. But not all black people can participate, want to participate in these types of conversations to be able to even think this far ahead. We're still at a place where we're trying to get Black people to come out and like vote and understand basic politics and how it affects them personally for like the Toronto mayoral candidate race or the premier of New Brunswick stuff. And still like that's hard, let alone having like a person that we're championing to be the voice when we need to barter and negotiate with other groups of people. We can't even get Acadians on our side, and I'm Acadian.
But what's interesting, so like in the early 70s, when Jean Augustine was young and she was running with like the Black Action Defense Committee and Joe Drummond, these cats were all in touch with like the SNCC, you know, those students on the bus in America going along. But anyway, so they made a Black Manifesto, which is very similar to what Michael Jean just did with the United Halifax Declaration. So I've been in a comparison of, you know, this, what we're doing right now, this actually happened before. And when I compare the two, it was way stronger before, and then something fell off, and now we seem to be watered down. Not that I'm saying anybody watered it down or anything negative about those, and I love what went on. But there is a comparison of, we were super strong and connected, and even with Mennonites. And then there was a disconnect, and now here we are again. So I'm just hoping that this resurgence, we can take this momentum through FACE, through Tribe, through BBI, through Battle of the Arts New Brunswick, through Dialogue New Brunswick, through all these different organizations, through PRUDE, through the Black Historical Society, through the New Brunswick Black Artists Alliance, is to get this information normalized out into our minds, into some adults who can speak truth to power, because there's some stuff that we need to say to mixed kids and mixed kids with white moms. You speak of it a lot, Hillary. A lot of us grew up with white moms where we have a certain hidden thing we cannot say, but we need to be in a room together without our white moms so we can say some stuff to understand what's in us, because we have a real hiccup going on that we're unable to get by because nobody wants to be offensive. But we can speak truth to power without being offensive. And we learn how to do this through like the Cheryl Girl and Twice as Good Media and different people who you'll find online and on BlackLantic who will help your minds build in this way.
Sandra from Twice as Good. Your audio changed slightly.
Your audio just cut out, just so you know.
Can you hear me now? No?
We can hear you.
Far away.
It's very like 1920s radio or phone or something. I think if you're using a Bluetooth mic, it just died, which is okay. We weren't going to turn off your mic, but we are getting to the end of our hour here, and we already have decided we need to have you back on. Yeah. So we're almost done season 3. We're going to take a little break, I think, to try to regroup and make our season 3 even better. But you'll to everyone who's listening and got through to the end, you're going to hear more from Baba in season 3. That is an absolute guarantee. We have a couple minutes. Thank you so much for being on the show. This has been an enlightening show in exactly the way I knew it would be, but it's just the knowledge and information and names dropped. I mean, people are going to have to play this back and write down the different things you said, I feel like.
So if you can hear me, I did make notes and try to say specific dates and things so people can go back and research this. This is what working in agriculture helps. You can listen to your earbuds, make notes, and when you go back home at night, you can look this information up. So please do. I'm not trying to be an answer. I'm just trying to be a conduit so we can reach back to that old-time religion and get that bag.
Keep tagging us, man. We're gonna keep
conduits to get that bag.
Hey, man, yeah, and the bar moves slowly, but at least we're trying to move the bar. And when we move the bar, the other side, the other groups, they try to push the bar back, right? Mm-hmm. So it's another kind of dance that's constantly going on. We already shared your website for those watching the video. Where can people find you, Baba? Drop your. We're gonna tag you in all our posts as well, but drop your handle. Drop anywhere people want to get more knowledge. Buy from you. Like, get involved in your business.
Yeah, I see that up there. So the Black Rose Nation, just type that in everywhere. The Black Rose Nation. Type that in everywhere.
Logo in the corner.
YouTubes and Googles. YouTube, check out our YouTube. We have some crazy stuff about living with the colonizer, white parents. We did an episode. We did a bunch of shows about songs for Black families. So find us on YouTube and everywhere else.
for our YouTube post, we're gonna link the episode to your YouTube. We're gonna put your YouTube in the comments and everything.
Yeah.
And again,
Please.
you know, this will last and live for as long as YouTube lives.
Well, at the
Thank
last
you to
minute,
everyone.
I'm gonna take the time. Thank you, BlackLantic, for doing what you're doing. I really appreciate this. We are the movers and shakers. You are those people who they're going to be making the movies about and the plays in 100 years down the road. You're the new Abram Beverly Walker. You're the new Neath. You're the new Clarion, and you're doing it well. Great interviews, great people. Keep it up. We support you.
We will see you next
Can you just
week,
be here all
folks.
the time? Thank you.
Thank you.